Thank you so much, worship team. We are going to close out our sermon series today, Jesus in Real Life, and we are going to be looking at a pretty important subject in our everyday life, and that subject today is temptation. Is this going to be a fun talk today? Probably not. Probably not. But it's so important that we tackle this subject as we're looking at Jesus in real life. How many of you have ever given in to a temptation in your life that you later regretted? Yeah, come on. Hey, everybody, let's put our hands up on this one. Okay, yeah. We've been there. We've all been there. And in most cases, do you know why we gave in to that temptation? Because we wanted to. Okay? I mean, let's just be honest. It was because we wanted to, right? We felt like whatever that was tempting us, it was going to make us happy. It was going to supply this need that we felt like we had in that moment, right? Even if it was outside of the will of God, even if it wasn't what we know the truth of God's word warns against, we decided in that moment, you know what? Now, I think I'm going to be happy over there doing this thing. And so we do it. And I think another reason why so often that we are tempted and we fall into sin is because we are just not ready. We don't understand what's at stake. We don't understand the gravity of what's happening in our lives. See, we're going to, I hope we walk away today with this understanding. We are in a spiritual war every single day. This is war that's happening. Our spirit, this new spirit that God has placed in us, and our flesh, the sin nature that's still there, are constantly in battle with one another. They are at odds with each other, trying to pull us in different directions. God, through His Spirit, is trying to lead us along the path everlasting, and our sin nature and Satan is there trying to take us down. And this is a war. This is war that we're in on a daily basis. And so we need to understand what's happening, and we need to be prepared. We need to be ready because our enemy is going to attack and will continue to attack. Like Ray said about conflict last week, if you are alive, if your heart is still beating, you will continue to face temptation in your life. All of us. It's true for all of us. Listen to what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 16:13. He says, "Be on guard. Stand firm in the faith. Be courageous and be strong." Why does he give us these admonitions? Be ready, stay alert, because our enemy is going to attack. He's coming. Don't let your guard down. Be ready because he's coming. Listen to what Jesus tells his disciples in Matthew 26:41. He says, guys, watch and pray. Why does he choose those words with his disciples? Watch and pray. Why? So that you will be ready. Ready for what? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing. Isn't that true? We want to do what's right. So often we have the best of intentions. We want to do what's right. But Jesus reminds us the flesh is weak. The spirit is willing. The flesh is weak. So here is my words to you. Here are my words to you. Watch and pray. Be ready. Why are we watching and praying? Let me give us two reasons this morning as we're getting started. Number one, Satan, we've already said this, Satan is coming for you. And he's coming for me. Our spiritual enemy has a mission, and Ray talked about this mission last week. His mission is to what? To kill, to steal, and to destroy anything and everything that matters to God. And let me tell you something, sons and daughters of the King, you matter to God. And so he's going to be coming after you. You are his target. And like a fisherman, like a master fisherman, where's Mike Dalton today? Where's our master fisherman? There he is. Hey, Satan is like Mike Dalton. Okay, he is. No, he's nothing like Mike Dalton. Satan is a master fisherman, okay? He is studying us, and he is looking to discover the bait that he can dangle out in front of us, the lie that is going to lure us into his trap, okay? And it looks different for all of us. It's not going to be the same for me as it's going to be for Ray, as it's going to be for Jerry, as it's going to be for Cole. He knows your areas of weakness and vulnerabilities, and he wants to lure us with his lies. His greatest weapon is lies. He is the father of lies. He's been at this for thousands of years, and he has, from the beginning, decided to try to convince us that God is holding out on us. That's the lie. God is holding out on us. John Piper says of the tempting power of sin, sin gets its power by persuading me to believe that I will be happier if I follow it. The power of all temptation is the prospect that it will make me happier. So at the root of that sin and temptation is this idea that somehow, apart from God, independent from God, I'm going to be happier. I can find my joy and satisfaction outside of the source of life itself. And we buy into the lie, don't we? So often we buy into Satan's lies. Satan is coming after us, and here's an important thing to think about this morning. He's going to tempt you where you are temptable, okay? He's not going to come at you in an area where you're strong, where you don't have any issues. He's going to look for the chink in your armor, that area where you're weak, where you're most vulnerable, and he's just going to keep attacking. He's going to keep coming after you. Your specific areas of weakness, your own desires. See, James explains to us in the first chapter of his book, of his letter, that it's really our desires that are dragging us away. Our desires, we're enticed by our own stuff that's really particular to us in a lot of ways, our weaknesses, and those desires give birth to sin when we entertain those things. And so Satan is coming after those areas in your life. He's going to whisper in your ear, man, that thing, whatever that thing is going to make you happy. That's going to bring true satisfaction. Why would God limit you? Did God actually say that? I can't believe God would do that to you. You'll be happier pursuing or giving your life to something other than God, whatever that thing might be, wealth, sex, just living for ourselves. And we buy into the lies, don't we? If I do this, if I get this, if I go after this, it will lead me to happiness. I have to have this to be happy. We tell ourselves, just once won't hurt, right? Just once won't hurt. And then the next time happens. And the next time happens. And then the flip side comes. Now that I've ruined my life, God can't use me anymore, so I might as well just continue sinning. Have you ever been there? I mean, that's how Satan comes at us. On the front end, he tries to convince us of the lies. There won't be any consequences. This will make you happy. This will satisfy. Go for it. And once we fall into the trap and we're trapped in the sin, on the other end, here's what he does. He reminds us, look at what you did. I can't believe what you did. And now shame is his weapon against you. And we're trapped. We're stuck in our sin. Understand this morning that we are in a spiritual battle. So we have to be ready. We're going to watch and pray because we know the devil's coming for us. Here's the second reason we need to watch and pray, because we're not nearly as strong as we think we are. Listen to this warning in 1 Corinthians 10:12, and this is in the Living Bible. I love the way that this is paraphrased. Paul writes, so be careful if you are thinking, oh, I would never behave like that. That could never happen to me. Let this be a warning to you, for you too may fall into sin. Listen to how the Message paraphrases. It says, you're not exempt. You could fall flat on your face as easily as anyone else. Forget about self-confidence. It's useless. Cultivate God confidence. Scripture says that all of us who think we're standing firm, be careful, because we're just as vulnerable to Satan's attacks as anybody else. We can fall just like everybody else. We can still end up in a place that we don't want to be because we make decisions that don't honor God. We can overestimate our ability to resist temptation. Here's how it happens. We try to fight off temptation in our own power, in our own strength, in our own willpower. We think we can do it. And here's kind of some science. The part of the brain that controls our willpower is a limited resource, and it will always run out. It will always run out. It's a limited resource. The more we try to use it, the less we have, and eventually our self-control, our willpower starts to wane. And then we're sitting ducks. And all the while, God is saying, listen, I've given you my Spirit to help you in real life. And my Spirit, one of the fruits of a relationship with me, one of the fruits of my Spirit at work in your life is self-control. You don't have to produce it yourself. I want to produce that in and through my Spirit in your life. But we just totally neglect that, and we try to go toe-to-toe with Satan on our own. And I'm telling us, we're going to lose every time. The message says, forget about self-confidence. Forget about trying to muster up the strength and stand there. I should be able to do this. Let's do this, Satan. You're going to lose. Forget about self-confidence. Cultivate God confidence, your relationship with the power source, with His Spirit. Focus on His Spirit, His presence and His power. Watch and pray. Peter says it this way in 1 Peter 5:8. Stay alert. Watch out, for your great enemy, the devil, he prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. He wants to distract you. He wants to seduce you and destroy you. That is his mission. Do we understand what we're up against? Do we understand the gravity of the situation, the battle, the spiritual battle that is taking place in our lives every single day? He wants to ruin you. He wants to ruin you. This is war. And this is not a one and done on Satan's part. I hate this, but it's not. I'm coming at Kurt today, and man, he was having a good day today, and so he was able to resist. So Satan doesn't say, I guess I'm just going to give up on Kurt. He's too good for me. He's too strong for me. That's not how he works. That's not how it worked with Jesus in the garden. In the wilderness, he said, I'm just going to go now, and I'm going to come back later at a more opportune time. I'm going to be watching Kurt. I'm going to wait for a moment of weakness in his life. I know what his triggers are. I know when he's discouraged, when he's tired, when he's upset. And then I'm going to come back in again, and I'm going to go after him. He's going to keep coming at us until we surrender. You might win the battle today, but we have to remember the war is not over. So I want us to understand what we're up against, but there's hope for us today. So I want to share 3 keys to helping us fight temptation in our lives today. And I was inspired this week by Pastor Craig Groeschel. And so I'm going to be sharing some of the things I read from him this week in some of my own words. So here's the first key to fighting temptation for us. We want to make up our minds in advance to stay away from the line. Okay, I've got us a visual up here this morning. Here is a line. Can y'all see that? This little red piece of tape. It reminds us of how we used to hold down the red carpet in some of the places in the church. Y'all remember that? Some of this red duct tape. Now, this side, the side that I'm on right now, this is the right side. Okay, I am right now. I'm in God's will. My life is God honoring. I'm putting into practice the words of Jesus. This is the path of life. This is where we want to be. And on the other side is sin. It's wrong. This is outside of God's will. This is willful independence from God. This is doing our own thing, seeking pleasure and satisfaction outside of the truth of God's word. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous over here. But what do we tend to do with this line? What do we tend to do? Yeah, most of us, we try to get as close to the line as we possibly can. Maybe even, well, as long as I'm still good, most of me still over on this side, but let me just dabble my toes over here. Or maybe I'm even trying to straddle this line where I'm good on Sundays, I'm in church on Sundays, but I'm doing whatever I want to do during the rest of the week. And we try to get as close to this line or even cross the line and still keep a clear conscience, don't we? We're always pushing the limits. Why do we do that? Does anybody know does anybody else know what I'm talking about this morning? Am I the only one that plays this game? Okay, good. All of us try to play this game. But let's think about the opposite for a moment, okay? When we know something is dangerous in our lives, when we recognize danger, do we try to get as close to danger as we can, or do we stay as far away as we can? We stay as far away. I grew up in North Carolina. The mountains were just a few hours away. And so on family vacations, we would go up into the mountains. And as we were driving up those mountains, I would be scared to death because we were right there on the edge. And if you looked over the side, at any moment, if you crossed the line, you would go careening off the side of this mountain. And some places there were not even any guardrails. And so I would tell my dad, please move away, as far away from the edge as you possibly can. Because that's smart, right? That's the right thing to do. Now, if you're in a battle, if we're at war, do we want to go hang out on the front lines where all the action is happening, where it's most dangerous, or would we rather be back in the base where it's safe? So why can't we recognize in our battle against temptation how dangerous it is, this game that we're playing, where we want to get as close to the line as we can, we want to get our toes over, we want to straddle this line, and we've got to realize how dangerous this territory is. What could happen to us over here? Satan wants us in this place so that he can ruin us. So here's what I want us to do. Here's what we have to learn to do. Since we know that our enemy's coming for us, we've got to decide in advance, I'm going to stay as far away from that line as I possibly can. We've got to change our mindsets. I'm going to stay as far away from that as I possibly can. This is wrong. If this dishonors God and my identity as his child, what he has for me, his best for me, I'm not going to get as close as I can. I'm going to stay as far away as I can. But what do we think? We're still convinced so often, well, that's no fun. That's no fun. All the fun's over there, we're missing out. And we buy into the lie, don't we? We'll be happy, and here's the lie from the beginning. You will be happier apart from God. You'll be happier apart. You'll find all that you're looking for over here, pleasure and satisfaction. God's holding out on you. And so we buy into the lie, and we get ourselves over into this dangerous territory, and Satan takes us out with the promise of satisfaction and pleasure. These good desires that God has placed in us, these legitimate desires, and Satan says, take the shortcut, satisfy those in illegitimate ways over here. God doesn't have your best interest in mind. Go ahead and satisfy those how you see fit. I want us to listen to David in Psalm 16:6. I love this verse as I read it this week. He writes, the boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Surely I have a delightful inheritance. See, this was a godly man, and living a godly life was not restricting for David. It was freeing. It was freeing. The boundary lines that God has set up in my life, you know what's inside those boundary lines? There's security, and there's safety, and there's love, and there's joy, and there's peace. And it's the path of life that God has laid out for me. It's pleasant inside of the boundary lines of God. I want you to read Psalm 16 later today. Write that down. Read Psalm 16. He just goes on and on about how good it is inside the boundary lines. Inside is life to the full. There's freedom from emptiness and shame and regret. So here is the first step in our fight against temptation. Recognize the danger, and we're going to stay as far away from that line as we possibly can. Here's the second key. We're going to count the cost. We're going to count the cost. When we are facing temptation, when it's right in front of us, we need the big picture because this is all we can see. Jerry used to say, this is all we can see. We need to be able to see the big picture when we are fighting temptation because it's amazing some of the bad decisions we make when something is right in front of us. This is not who I am in Christ. This could destroy my life. But Satan doesn't want you thinking about those consequences. He doesn't want you to think about those at all. So we convince ourselves it's not that big a deal. It's not that dangerous. But the truth is, this pleasure or profit that is tempting you is only temporary, but the consequences are lasting. We've got to remember that. Whatever this is, it's only temporary, but the consequences are lasting. Here's an important question for us this morning. What do we have to show for all the temptation that we've given into in our lives? Let's just think about that for real. What do we have to show for those times that we gave in to temptation? Anything good come from those times? Maybe temporarily, maybe for the moment, some fleeting pleasure, but what was the lasting result? Secrets, hiding, loss of joy, shame, cover-up, regret, loss of trust, the erosion of physical and mental health. Does that sound like it's worth it? Is it worth it? Is it worth that fleeting moment of whatever we think we're gonna find over here apart from God and His best for us? Is it worth it? So here's what I want us to learn to do. We've got to learn how to take captive those thoughts and make them obedient to Christ. Take them captive. That's where it starts, at the thought level. See, temptation itself isn't sin. All of us are tempted. Jesus was tempted. Temptation is not sin. It's what we do with that temptation that can either lead us away from sin or into sin. So we want to take captive those thoughts and ask ourselves, what if the worst case scenario comes true? If I do whatever this thing is, what if the worst case scenario comes true? We asked this question a few weeks ago. What story do I want my life to tell? Do I want this to be a part of my story? Our decisions are writing our story for us. Is there a potentially catastrophic decision tempting you right now? Andy Stanley said this a few weeks ago. Private decisions always have public outcomes. Those private decisions always have public outcomes. We could lose our reputation, our job, our marriage, our integrity, a loved one, our financial future. I'm begging you today, count the cost. There's a pretty sobering verse that's found in Numbers 32:23. This verse says, "Be sure that your sin will find you out." I don't like that verse. I don't like that verse at all. And Jesus says, you know what? Everything done in the darkness, eventually, you know what's going to happen? It's going to come into the light. It's coming. It's coming. So what if I betray my vows? What will happen if I betray my wedding vows? If I make this deal, if I click on this link? A few moments of fleeting pleasure can wreck a lifetime of pursuing Jesus. And that's what Satan wants. That's his objective. How can I take you down? The truth is this morning, God always has the best for His children. He's got the best for you. He's got life in abundance, the path of life planned out for you. Now, is it the narrow way? Does it look like the world and the culture and the majority of the decisions that everybody else is making? No, it doesn't look like that. It looks like Jesus. But if you do life the Jesus way, you get the Jesus life to the full. He doesn't want you to suffer the consequences of your sin, the pain, the sorrow, the shame, and the regret. And here's the good news. He doesn't leave us alone to fight this battle. It says in Hebrews that we have a high priest who's in heaven, and his name is Jesus, who understands what we're going through. He's able to empathize with us. Why? Because he's been in your shoes. He sympathizes with our weakness. You know why he sympathizes with us? Because he was tempted in every way, just like you and me, yet he did not sin. That's in Hebrews 4:15. He did not sin. We're sometimes embarrassed to ask God for help, aren't we? Especially when we keep giving in. But listen to the next verse here in Hebrews 4:16. He says, in light of the fact that we have a Savior, a high priest who's been tempted in every way just as we have been tempted. Listen, he says, let us then approach God's throne of, what's the word? Grace. Do we deserve grace? No. In our time of need, let us approach God's throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need, in our time of temptation, in real life. We can do that. We can approach the throne of grace with confidence because he sympathizes with us. He's been there. He knows how to overcome. He was tempted in every way but never sinned. So here's some questions for us. Do you want mercy and grace in your time of need? Do you actually want to be delivered from temptation? That's a big one. Because maybe some of us were like, yes, but really, I don't know, not so much. Why did Jesus ask the lame man, do you want to get well? This guy had been sick for 38 years. Yet he asked him, do you want to get well? So I ask you this morning, do you want victory over temptation? Really? Or do we want to keep playing the, you know what, I'll just ask for forgiveness later game? Or equally as destructive, I've already messed up, so I might as well just live over here. And I'm telling you this morning, both of these mindsets woefully underestimates who God is. God does not wink at our sin, especially deliberate sin. He doesn't wink at that. It cost him too much. We talked about that a few weeks ago. What it cost, what our sin cost his one and only Son on the cross, the suffering that he had to endure on the cross. But here's the flip side of that. No matter where we are, as far away, as deep as we are in sin, you are never out of God's reach. He died on the cross to deliver you from whatever you're dealing with in your life. There's freedom and deliverance and mercy and grace if we'll just turn to him in our time of need. And that leads us to our third key for fighting temptation this morning. We're going to take the way of escape. This is a challenge for us. Let's read a very important verse this morning, 1 Corinthians 10:13. This verse blew me away this week. The temptations in your life are no different from what others experience, okay? A lot of us think, I'm the only one out here struggling in this. I'm the only one that has to deal with this. That's not true. That's a lie. The temptations in your life are no different from what others experience, and God is faithful. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand, and when you are tempted, he will show you a way out, a way of escape, so that you can endure. Think about it. there's three important things we need to take away from this verse. First of all, everybody's tempted. Nobody's special. Nobody's different. All of us are tempted. And here's the second thing. God is faithful. How is he faithful? He's going to put limits on what the temptation is in our life. And here's the big one. Secondly, he is going to provide a way of escape. He will. He will provide a way of escape. The Holy Spirit is going to be there to alert you, to protect you, to deliver you, to give you the path and the power to take that way of escape. But you know what we do when temptation comes a lot of times? Let me just flip that switch and turn him off. I don't want that voice right now. Why? Because I'm ready to play, okay? I'm ready to dabble in this side of things. And so in order to do that, you know what we have to do? We have to turn the voice of the Holy Spirit off. That's what we have to do. And all the while, God is saying, this isn't more than you can handle, and I have a way of escape right here if you'll just listen, if you'll just take it. But a lot of the times we don't want that. I think the best example that we see of this in Scripture is Joseph. Back in the book of Genesis. Y'all remember his story? He was sold by his brothers. He ends up in Egypt in the house of a man named Potiphar, one of the Pharaoh's officials. And Potiphar has got this wife who is hot for Joseph. All right? She wants Joseph. Scripture says that Joseph was handsome and well built. And he's the servant in this house. Sounds like a romance novel, doesn't it? And Potiphar's wife is after him every single day. Now, we've got to remember, Joseph could have so easily have given in to the temptation. He was there all alone. Nobody even knew he was there in Egypt. His brothers didn't know where he was. He was in another country. He was all alone. There was no accountability. Nobody's going to find out. He's young and single, and this hot cougar is after him. So, hey, let's just go for it, right? I was telling the guys, this actually happened to me when I was in Ecuador one time, okay? I did mission work for 3 years with the International Mission Board. I was in Argentina, and I went up to a conference in Ecuador for 1 week, and I was staying in a hotel, had my own hotel room by myself. I was out sightseeing one day, and believe it or not, I didn't always look like this, okay? When I was younger, I worked out. I looked like Tristan over there. I worked out, and I was okay looking, and I was out sightseeing one day, and I'm walking down the sidewalk, and this woman comes running out of this salon, this beauty salon, and she stops me on the sidewalk. She says, "You're an American." I said, "Yes, ma'am." I said, "Where are you staying?" Right? Can I come see you later? Right? I'm in another country, y'all. Y'all didn't know where I was, right? I was in my own hotel room. If I was in a place, I could have so easily said, "Yeah, I'm right up the way in room 450 or whatever." But that wasn't who I was. That wasn't who I was. I had already decided in my mind that I was going to be pure before the Lord. And so I was able to stand against this proposition, okay? This is the same with Joseph. She is coming after him, but Joseph had already made up his mind. He had decided in advance that this was not something he was going to do, right? We don't make up our minds about how we feel about premarital sex when we have our clothes off in the back seat of a car, all right? That's not how that works. You've got to make up your mind in advance. This is who I am. I'm going to honor God in this way. I am not going to cross that line. I'm going to stay as far away from that line as I can because I'm interested in honoring God. Because Joseph had already decided, he was able to resist. His response to this woman was, "How can I do this? Your husband trusts me. I'm not going to sin against him, but more importantly, I'm not going to sin against God." He says, "How can I sin against God?" See, his eyes weren't down here on the line thinking about how much I can get away with. His eyes were focused on God. and his relationship with God and the truth of God's word and who he was in God's eyes. And when you're in that place, you have the power of God on your side. And he was able to resist. But she keeps coming for him day after day after day. And that's how Satan comes after us. He's going to keep at you, waiting for that moment of weakness, So we have to be ready. One day, Potiphar's wife decides to go for it all. So she grabs him and says, come to bed with me. And in order to escape this situation, he literally comes out of his coat and he runs out of the house. He has to run away from this situation. You see what's happening here? If we're not able to resist it, we've got to run from it. We've got to make up our minds, and we have to run from it. David Jeremiah said there's 3 things in the Bible that we're told to run away from: idolatry, immorality, which is sexual sin, and greed. We got to run from those things. We can't go toe to toe. These things have incredible power over us. We can't try to stand and fight. The Bible says to run as fast as you can in the opposite direction. But here's the good news from 1 Corinthians 10:13. When we're tempted, it's never too much, and there's always a way of escape. We've just got to take the escape route. We've got to be willing to take the escape route. We got to stop believing the lies. Hear the lies that we've bought into. I'm sure we've used these excuses ourselves. I just couldn't help myself. Right? You ever use that one? Or I had no choice but to give in. Those are lies from Satan. And the truth of God's word says, no, you always have a choice, and there's always a way out. So let's do that. Let's stay as far away from the line as we can. Let's count the cost, and then let's be ready in the moment to take the way of escape. If we're going to be ready, we got to be honest about where we're most vulnerable. So let's self-evaluate just a little bit as we're closing this morning. Here's some questions for you. I want you to think about yourself personally as I'm asking these questions this morning. What is the most powerful temptation you're facing in your life right now? Think about that for a minute. Just make a mental note. The most powerful temptation you're facing right now. The thing that grabs you, the thing that has the potential to take you down. We said this a few months ago. What's your bowl of stew? That's what we called it. Remember Esau, who gave up his entire inheritance just for a bowl of lentil stew? What's your bowl of stew? Here's another question. Where are you most vulnerable? In which of these areas? We want to self-evaluate. We want to know ourselves so that we can be ready. Which of these areas? In the area of unforgiveness, envy, gossip, lust, financial compromise, lying, drugs or alcohol, approval? Or are you just lukewarm right now? I'm one person around my Christian friends on Sunday, but out there I'm a totally different person. Where are you most vulnerable? What leads you into temptation? Think about this. What leads you into temptation? Is it isolation, insecurity, anger, jealousy, greed, lies that we believe, loneliness, assumptions about other people? When Jesus was in the wilderness, you know what was happening in his life? He was alone, he was hungry, and he was tired. And Satan slips in and tries to tempt him when he's alone, hungry, and tired. What leads you into temptation? What's your pattern of temptation? When are you most tempted? What time of the day? Think about it. If you really are honest with yourself and you're self-evaluating, what time of the day? When are you most tempted? Where are you most tempted? Is it at home? Is it at work? On the road? When you're on your phone or the computer? Where are you most tempted? Who is with you when you're most tempted? And then how am I feeling when I'm most tempted? Tired, out of routine, lonely, bored, depressed, spiritually dry, insecure, wounded or hurt, sad or frustrated? What's driving this whatever need that I feel like is or hole in my life? Why am I doing this really? We want to be able to recognize our patterns so that we can be prepared. We've got to be prepared for this spiritual battle that we're in. For me, here are my triggers. When I'm alone, when I'm bored, and when I'm discouraged. That's what works for me. Alone, bored, and discouraged. And Satan's got an inroad. As much as is in your power, here's what we want to do. We want to steer clear of these situations where temptation is most likely. In other words, don't go where temptation will find you. If you're an alcoholic, should you be hanging out at the bar? No. Let's not go where temptation is going to find you. On the TV show Hee Haw, y'all remember that show? Doc Campbell is confronted by a patient who says that he broke his arm in 2 places. And the doc replies, well, then just stay out of them places. Right? I mean, that's common sense, right? I mean, if that's where it's happening, we're going to stay away from those places. Sometimes the answer is as simple as that. I'm going to avoid the people and the places and the activities that take me down the road towards temptation and sin. That's just common sense, right? Just avoid those places as much as possible, as much as you can. Stay away from the line. And here's a big one for us. Make yourself accountable. We've got to make ourselves accountable. For a lot of years, I had a program on my computer that blocked adult content and that would send weekly kind of emails to Jerry Campbell and Steve Bass about all of my internet activity. Yeah, ooh, yeah. And some of y'all might be out there thinking, gosh, Don, are you that weak? And my answer to that is sometimes. Sometimes. Back in that time, sometimes. But I'm here to tell you today, because I sought accountability, I'm in a much better place today than I was 15 years ago. And it was because I sought accountability. I cared more about purity, what God was trying to do in my life, my reputation, my story, my witness to my kids, my relationship with my spouse, my ministry, and my future more than my pride. Okay? Those things were more important. So I'm telling you, share your struggles today. Find people in your life that you can be honest with, that are trustworthy, that can pray with you, encourage you, and here's an important one, that can speak truth to you. See, most of us don't want to hear the truth, but we need those people who are willing to speak truth in our lives. Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 says, 2 people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. Verse 11 goes on to say 3 are even better than 2. Here's what verse 10 says. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help, but someone who falls alone is in real trouble. We need each other. We need accountability. So here's some questions for us. Who is helping you fight temptation? Who in your life is helping you fight temptation? Who have you invited into your life to help you grow spiritually? Who do you allow to ask you the tough questions? And here's a tough one. If you don't want accountability in your life, I have to ask, how serious are you about overcoming temptation? Do you want to get well? If you want to get well, if you truly want to get well, you need accountability. We all need accountability in our lives. We need to know the truth. You know, that's our weapon. That's our weapon in our fight. Ephesians chapter 6 says that's our offensive weapon in this spiritual battle that we're in. If we're going to replace the lies that come from over here with the truth, we've got to know the truth of God's word. When Jesus was tempted in the wilderness those 3 times, 3 times he responded to Satan, "It is written." It's written. See, he wasn't depending on how he was feeling or his circumstances or what Satan was saying. His response was grounded in objective truth. So we've got to know the truth of God's word. Jesus was saying, I'm not going to take matters into my own hands. I'm not going to fall victim to my circumstances or how I'm feeling. I choose to trust God and his word. It is written. So we've got to know the truth. And then finally, let's anchor ourselves in our gospel identity, in the truth of the gospel. Let me share some of the truth of the gospel with you this morning. The gospel proclaims, though I am tempted, I don't have to sin. I can have the victory. And when I stumble, it's not fatal. I'm not disqualified when I stumble and fall. I am a child of God. Even in my mess ups, I am loved by my Father. I'm a child of God. I'm a son. I'm a daughter of the King. I'm going to follow him. I'm going to get myself up. I'm going to brush myself off. I'm going to confess my sin. I'm going to ask him. I'm going to approach the throne of grace and mercy and ask him to forgive me. And I'm going to get back on the path of righteousness of life with him. I'm going to follow him. I'm going to allow him to lead me. I'm going to let him teach me how to deny myself and submit to his Spirit. I'm going to embrace the Jesus life, my relationship with him, his kingdom above all else. I'm going to find my joy and peace and happiness and fulfillment in him. And even when I don't feel righteous, I'm going to remind myself that his righteousness was credited to me. I don't deserve it, but because of his mercy and grace, the righteousness of God has been credited to my account through the death of Jesus on the cross. I'm clothed in his robes of righteousness. I'm covered in his blood. I'm dead to sin. Those old sin clothes, they don't fit me anymore. Why do I keep trying to put them on? I'm dead to sin. I have his resurrection power in me. Sin can't rule in my life anymore. Believe the truth of your new identity. You've got to anchor yourself in your gospel identity if we're going to win this battle over temptation and sin. The path that leads from temptation and evil is really just saying yes to Jesus in real life. Just saying yes to Jesus, his power, his presence, his truth. It's not just watch what I do. It's give my heart to God. Just give more and more of my heart to God. I'm not going to focus on the sin. I'm going to turn my eyes to the Savior. I'm going to take my eyes off the line and on to Jesus and the gospel. That's where the power is found. The same power that raised Christ from the dead is also our source of strength in real life. He's there for you today. Admit your weakness, lean into Jesus, and experience his strength. I thought about last night, just trying to think of a way to close, and we sang a hymn this morning, and I thought about turn your eyes upon Jesus last night. I thought it was just perfect for what we were talking about today. That old hymn says, turn your eyes upon Jesus and look full in his wonderful face. And when I do that, the things of earth grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. So let's fix our eyes on Jesus today. Let me pray for us, Father.